There's certainly no ill intent from those who produce game development tutorials. They are not outright bad, and if you watch tutorials, you are not a failure. Tutorials certainly have their place, but there's an underlying problem that you won't notice until the later stages of your journey. It's likely when you first tried to make your first game that you came up with what you thought was an amazing idea. Dare I say, your dream game, but you weren't sure how to start. You type into YouTube how to make a game and you find this amazing tutorial that says it will teach you how to create that exact genre of game that you're looking for. You follow the tutorial step by step, and at the end, you have a fully functioning title. Congratulations, you've completed your very first project, but you realize that it's nothing like the original idea you had. You want to add a few extra mechanics, but instead of trying to figure out how to implement them yourself, you start searching how to implement X feature into Unity. Maybe the searches get so specific that there's not a single tutorial online. You resort to the forums where you ask the same question and no one answers. Your dream game is now dead in the water. You've simply fallen into the trap of overusing development tutorials. This is a situation that many aspiring developers find themselves in on a daily basis. They find that their success is dependent on there being a tutorial available that fits their needs perfectly, rather than solving the problems themselves. The truth is, game development is hard, and in order to be a great game developer, you need to solve problems. It's not the case that if you just keep going through these tutorials, you will face every possible problem and learn every possible solution. In fact, learning this way is not learning at all. It's actually known as inauthentic learning. An example of inauthentic learning is by studying for an upcoming test. You will revise as much as you can, you hold information, but just a few days after you complete that test, you will forget 95% of the information you've read. It's the exact same here as you copy the tutorial exactly to develop your game without knowing why it was done in that way. It's like a game of Tetris. You keep stacking information on top of each other, but eventually it all comes crashing down. This in itself is a fundamental problem that plagues not only game development tutorials, but also with our school system. But hey, we do only have time to solve one problem for today, so let's focus on fixing those tutorials and hope that the school system catches up eventually. But this is just where the problem begins. As a game developer, your job is to create an enjoyable experience, but what you've actually done is just copy a basic template. The game itself is not enjoyable, and thus you have put together a game which players will play for a couple of minutes and then never play again. There's a quote from Game Deve which says, "Painting is easy when you don't know how, but very difficult when you do." And this fits perfectly with game development. It's easy to come up with game ideas and it's easy to copy tutorials, but if you want to become a great game developer, you need to go through the challenges. The best thing that you can do at the start of your journey is to move away from full-length tutorials and stop being dependent on them. Instead, go to itch.io, look at various game jams and analyze the winners of the top rated games. You will see a lot of single input mechanics. Play through them, read comments, and note down what you think is fun and what you think is frustrating. Use your notes to come up with a simple solution and try to replicate it whilst implementing your solution later. This won't be your dream game. If you are a complete beginner, this will still be difficult and you probably will still rely on using tutorials and other resources, but the difference is that you're not copying the process from start to finish. You're taking bits and pieces from various sources to create a unique experience. Not to mention that you've already done the hard work of being a game developer. You've actually designed a game. You found a problem and you found a solution. Game design is a major part of game development and it's rarely ever spoken about in these tutorials. It may be because these tutorials teach you fundamental skills of programming and development. But then another question that must be raised about these game development tutorials is why they never teach you about optimization. I have a question for you. What made the tutorial you used the perfect solution to the problem that you was trying to solve? Likely, it was just convenient. You had your dream game and it just so happened that there was a full-length YouTube tutorial showing you how to make that type of game. But the thing is, Anyone can create a YouTube channel and start uploading content, and even though they can put together an amazing tutorial, that doesn't mean that the game that they put together is at all good. It may be functional, but just like the previous point where it's not fun, it's also not ready to be published. The reason these tutorials do so well is that they're aimed at beginners, and to make them as beginner friendly as possible, they simplified everything. There are multiple ways you can develop a single mechanic. There isn't just one solution that fits all as a developer. It's up to you to decide on the best way to implement that mechanic. Not just because it's easy to do like most tutorials are set up for, but because it's the most efficient way of doing things for the type of game that you're designing. Optimization is not the first thing that you should think of, but it is something that will play a key part at the end. Core functionality should be your first priority. You just want the mechanics to work no matter what, and once you know the game you're designing is fun, that's when you enter the polishing stage. This is where you'll start to bring in-game assets, clean them up, and make them look as aesthetically pleasing as possible. It's also the part where you'll optimize the game. You may even need to rebuild full systems from the ground up, because what was there in the first place was just there for functionality as you went through testing, but wasn't done in the most efficient way. If you have a high intensity game that requires a lot of GPU power and only those with a 4090 can play it with there being no scaling options, congratulations, you've developed a game that only a very small percentage of players can play within the entire world. This is what most tutorials miss out on, key information that helps users to optimize their games before publishing. There are optimization lessons out there, but most of the popular game dev tutorials will not ever mention it. And as a beginner, you wouldn't ever think to search about optimization because you can't simply know what you don't know. This is just a cognitive barrier. It's not until it's mentioned that beginners will start to research what they need to do and why it's important. There are clear and obvious problems with following tutorials, but they do have their place. The best tutorials out there are those which will show you how to use a tool. Game engines are an example of a tool, and there are plenty of amazing videos out there which show you how to navigate each game engine. They offer a swift and effortless method for familiarizing oneself with a new tool, saving you the hassle of aimlessly exploring and attempting to decipher its workings on your own. There are also notable game developers in the community who are exceptions to the rules. They will lay out the groundworks for a tutorial, highlight that there are other ways to complete the project, give additional resources on how to do that, and will mention steps needed for optimization before publishing. Our recommendation when first starting out is to use a game engine specific tutorial to familiarize yourself with the controls. Feel free to use a full step-by-step tutorial for developing your first game, but go into it knowing that this will not lead to you creating your dream game. Once done, that's when you can attempt to deconstruct simple single input games on itch.io or through game jams. Play the games, figure out what they did well and what they did badly, read comments, note down improvements to the problems, and attempt to recreate the game and implement your solution. This is easier said than done, but the more you do it, the better you will get. Ultimately, you need to learn how to program. This is not just about making games. You can learn core programming principles through books, online resources, and through experimentation. It also helps to network with like-minded people. Learning anything by yourself is difficult, but it does become a lot easier and a lot more entertaining when working with others. Discord servers and Telegram groups are perfect for this. And remember, game development is hard. It's not supposed to be easy. Don't believe me when I'm talking about the struggles of game development? Well, why don't you click the video on screen, where we share the harsh reality of being a game developer. But if you want to learn more about the gaming industry, then hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Have you done it? Awesome. Now it's time to click that video.